Education meeting is called to order. We'll start with the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Could you do roll call attendance, please, Marty, for those who are present?
Mary Jo Radcliffe.
Here.
Mary Jo Radcliffe.
Here.
Tom X.
Here.
Troy Webb.
Here.
Amy Huffman. Here. Ann Beamer.
Here.
Brad Dodd.
Here.
Thank you. Has the meeting been noticed to the public according to open meeting law?
Yes, it has.
Thank you. I make a motion to move the number 6.1, focus on purpose, the student senate report to the front. We have students ready to report, and so they can get off to their homes. Second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? We'll see the student senate report.
Hi Theta, I'm not sure if you can hear us, but we're ready when you are. Oh, wait, we're gonna try to get the microphone in the right, we gotta get our microphone in the right spot so you can be heard. Now please try speaking.
Try again. All right.
Much better.
All right, great. So good evening, everybody. My name is Peggy Balsero. I am a senior at the high school as well as Student Senate President. And this year, the Student Senate has worked towards forming committees based on needs presented by the student body. And these committees are addressing topics such as food waste, mental health, and the school environment, and are headed up by Cooper Peterson, Serenity Apicella, and Noel Rowan. We plan to meet every other week with our committees as well as with all of our representatives in order to ensure we have a productive year for the betterment of the high school. The Student Senate has decided to focus on the aforementioned topics as they feel they are important areas for the group to improve. We are looking forward to helping improve all students' high school experiences and accomplishing the goals set by the Senate this year. And that's all I have.
Does anyone have any questions for Theta? Ask her if she can.
Theta, could you give us a brief overview of how you felt the homecoming activities went last week?
I think that the homecoming activities went very well. We had a lot of students address ideas that they had for homecoming week and the dance and specifically powder puff. And we sort of redirected their attention over to the pep club for assistance on those things. But I think that the Student Senate thinks that it went very well with how it was organized this year.
Great. Any questions from the board?
Thank you, Theta.
All right, thank you.
For the public comment, okay. We'll move 5.1 and 8.6 to the public comment section. Okay. So we'll start out with 5.2, Proclamation of Parents' Rights in Education Month.
So I'm unsure who would like to take the lead on this. This was something that was brought before the board by a community member at our last monthly meeting. So I would open it to your discussion.
This is a
testing. Okay, that works. Okay. This was brought up by one of the parents here, or a community member, that basically they asked if I would bring it for an agenda item for the board. And so it's pretty self-explanatory, basically. And what they're looking for is looking at just basically if the school board would agree with this document, and then of course put their name behind it. I'm not sure how that works in Robert's rules, if it's something that is voted upon, or is it something that takes individual action, and I was asking Mary Jo, how would that be approached? I don't honestly know.
About myself, after doing some digging, I found a recording from someone representing this, and at the end of her talk, she said, you know, the choice is yours. You're either against us or you're for us. And I just kind of took that as, well, if we're against you, then they said that they would do all that they could to remove you from the school board. If you're for us, then it's a win-win situation. And I just thought, a win-win for who? And I believe that in our policies we have several opportunities, great opportunities for students or for parents to be involved in their child's education. I know at the state level there are 15 rights that parents have in the education of their child. So I'm not necessarily a proponent of this proclamation.
Mary Jo?
I also did some digging on the site also, and the school board is supposed to be a non-partisan body. The organization is definitely partisan, and the first thing I saw when I looked at it is selling t-shirts that say, "My child is not your guinea pig." So I believe in parents participating in school. Parents have rights to be at school, but I'm not interested at this time in endorsing this.
I'll just follow up with it. So basically, the statement that's presented to the board, despite the group that's proposing or creating the document, we're not everyone's comfortable with actually supporting the document as it stands. Just a document, not the actual background of the document. I know it's you could consider that sometimes difficult, but what I'm saying is, if it's a document, we already support most of these statements. I think we support all of them. So this is more of an affirmation to me. That's why I said to bring it to the board. It's up to the board how to handle it, of course. Is it something that we want to handle as an individual boards instead of doing any action item on this? I'm going to ask on this.
So procedurally, I think that's what he was asking.
Yeah, that's what I was asking you, Mary Jo, how that would
Well,
go about that.
procedurally, I mean, we would have to, someone would make a motion second, then we would vote on it, and we'd have discussion and then vote on it, whether we wanted to sign it. Amy, did you have something?
Well, is this on? I was just going to say that if you're supporting the document, you are also supporting the group that's behind the document. It's no different than if it's any other group that's out there. You might agree with some of what they say and not all of what they say, you know, and so I just feel like whatever a person chooses to do, they can't just say, yep, this, but not the rest of it, because if somebody wants to call you out on your signature on that document, they're not just looking at that, they're looking at the organization behind it as well. I looked over the website too, the link that was provided, and I didn't see, I guess I didn't notice like what you were referring to. And while there's nothing on here that I don't agree with, I somewhat reluctant just because we don't always know the fullness of what an organization stands for. And so that's where my hesitation lies. So I just didn't, not against it, but I'm for with it because I'm cautious. So that's all I wanted to say, I guess.
Again, I also backgrounded both the proclamation and the organization, and we talk about local control to our board, and that's why we're here. And this is a national pact. This was not generated in Black Falls. It was not generated. I can't say it was generated in Wisconsin, but it's a national organization. The same document is going out to every school board in the U.S. is their intent, And I think it reads a lot like political theater. This is, this doesn't accomplish anything. This doesn't change the way we act as a board. We have the board policies like Tom talked about. We have the rights of a parent in the state of Wisconsin. I don't think this changes the way we do anything. I think this is just something for this organization to gain some news feed, I guess.
Is there any other discussion? I also saw the verbiage online that they could personalize. It was a national template to individualize your school, and again, I thought it was pretty political motivated here. Is there a motion to accept or decline?
I'll make a motion to either ratify it.
Just, okay. Is there a second? Hearing no second, does not go forward. Thank you. Employment recommendations.
All right, so you'll notice that our high school office is going to be almost entirely new after many years of the same kind of faces there. There's an awful lot of turnover, but for great reasons. Karen Toucher has been serving the district for many years and is really excited, looking forward to retirement. And then Daisy Gerdes, really excited. She is getting ready to do her student teaching this spring, so she is moving. Obviously, she can't do that job at the same time student teaching, and so we're excited that she's going to be a certified teacher when it comes around to hiring season moving forward. So a couple of other roles, of course, every time we can hire another bus driver, we're super excited. And that was one of the support staff positions that I talked about last time that we still needed to hire. So we are moving forward.
Any questions?
Is Daisy doing her student teaching within our district?
She has been reaching out to Red Creek to see, but the universities somewhat dictate that based off of where they have staff to be able to supervise. So
She hasn't been placed yet.
she has not been placed yet, correct.
Thank you.
Mary Jo? Oh, I thought you raised your mic. No, I was good. Any questions or comments? Is there a motion to approve? Oh, it says, oh, okay. Is there a motion to approve the employment recommendation? Thank you.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Summer programming report.
I included for your information the summer programming report. It's not very cute to look at, but while we're on that front page there, those minutes that are up there, 48,600, that is what they use for the math to determine what a full-time equivalent student is. And so the rest of that document is all of the courses and attendance and all of that stuff that took place during summer. And when you divide that by the 48,600, we came up with 36 students that we are added to our, or 38 students, pardon me, that we can add to our enrollment. But I wanted to just remind everyone, this summer was really exceptional with all of the credit recovery that happened here at Red Creek. Two things: we would hope that we don't need as much credit recovery every single year, right? And second thing, unless we decide that we are going to reconfigure our summer school budget, we can't afford to do what we did this past summer on an annual basis. And so the team will be meeting with groups of staff throughout the next couple months to start talking about what it could possibly look like. It sounds silly when we're only in October, but by February, we've usually got the dates out there so that people can make plans around that. I did appreciate, it's really small font to be able to see up on the screen, but in your report you can see there's a lot of different courses that are offered during the course of summer. And this year we had more staff engaged than we have in a long time, and I just feel like after the year that was, people were ready for summer break. We're really appreciative that so many staff came back and invested in that summertime as well. So 38 students, we get to count each one of those as a 40% FTE. So it takes 2 and a little bit in order to make one full-time equivalent student. So just wanted to share that with you. And then I did put the swimming report in there separately because I just think that's such an amazing community service that we provide. Many years ago, the district made the commitment to offer the free swimming lessons, and look at the numbers of kids that we impact each summer. I just think with the Lake Wazee, Lake Arbutus, the Black River, the beautiful Hoffman Park, I think it is a great service to provide those free of charge, and many families take advantage of them. So I wanted to highlight that as well as our great staff who take care of all of that work as well.
Do you know, Shelby, comparatively, so 370 students are what listed, do you know how does that compare?
That's, secondary wise, that is much higher. Like, we've not even offered high school, summer school. Let me take that back. Last year, we made
No,
them.
I'm talking about the swimming.
Oh, swimming, sorry. That is pretty comparable, it really is, yep. And some kids are counted more than once because they take level 1 in the first session, and then they graduate to level 2 in the second session.
Okay.
So those are actually, kids that move from one level to the next.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Any questions or comments on the summer school report? Thank you, Dr. Severson. We'll move on to fall universal learning report.
Alright. So the presentation that Jill's going to put up there is not exactly the same one that was in your board packet, and I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about that and the why. Yep.
Lost it.
So just for everyone's frame of reference, this is the iReady data, so it would be it would be kindergarten through 8th grade for math and 2nd grade through 8th grade for reading. When Dr. Sullivan gives you the student success report, you're going to see about K1 literacy work that is not through this iReady. And I also just wanted to remind everyone that this fall screener, it really is like the second week of school and kids are checking in. It really is used to affirm that we've got them in the right intervention groups for the year. It is meant to document growth throughout the year. It is all of those pieces, but it is a very early snapshot in the fall. So, all right, go for it. I wanted to show you, first of all, what we're looking at. This is that iReady data. It's a computer-based assessment. It is nationally normed. And each individual student is given a different growth goal depending on where they score. When we go through all of the rest of the slides, just for convenience sake, I'm telling you that the first column is going to be fall 2020, the middle column is going to be spring 2021, and then the next column is going to be fall 2021. And you're going to see this data presented 2 different ways, and there's an important reason why. So let's go first. So this is the K-8 math, and this is the chart that was included in your document. This is the picture of grade level bands and where our students score. If you recall, the color codes are a little bit different from when we used to look at our star. The green is considered at or above, the yellow is about 1 grade level below, and the red is 2 grade levels below. So this is K-8 math. Will you switch to the next one? This is also K-8 math from the exact same snapshot. And so the point of showing you the exact same data in 2 different ways is to make sure that when we are looking at data, we are using it responsibly, right? We have made a strong commitment to using data as a flashlight. It is a moment in time, and when you use data as a flashlight to paint your direction moving forward, it can be used constructively and it can be used towards improvement efforts. The minute data becomes politicized, the trust is lost, and there is, when you make inappropriate conclusions from a snapshot in time, an awful lot of damage can be done. And so this is the national percentile. That blue line is the national average. The dark green on top is students above grade level. The green is at grade, or at benchmark it's called. The blue is on watch. The yellow is intervention, and the red is significant intervention. For those of you that have been on the board for a while, you probably recognize all these colors. This is the way we used to look at all of our data, and then we decided to compact it a little bit. But I want you to know that when we use this data internally, it is meant for us to reflect. When it is used, I always say data as a flashlight or data as a hammer. And when data is used as a hammer, it gets into the blame and shame game. When it's used as a flashlight, it's what can our system do to serve better, right? How can we continue to get better? So I wanted you to see that the same piece of data can tell 2 very, very, very different stories depending on the lens through which you're viewing it. So next, forestry math. You could look at this and say, holy buckets, did those kids grow a lot last spring or last school year, right? Because I also wanted to remind you that when we look at our spring data, that was with 35% of our students home for virtual education. And thankfully, most of them are back. So this is that picture, and then flip. Oh, did we skip this slide? Yep, there we go. There's the Forest Street math with the national norm. Again, the blue line is the national averages, the dark green is above grade level, green is at grade level, on watch, intervention, significant intervention.
And
Yes.
and just so I clear it, I think I asked this question last spring, so when we go from fall to spring, the bars also move. right?
Absolutely.
Because that's basically first grade fall expectations versus first grade spring expectations.
Absolutely, absolutely. It is a moving target. As kids are in the system longer, it is expected that their score also grows. And thank you for that. If you look at the columns, you can see that this fall's column is shorter. Jill's going to talk about that when she talks about our enrollment. And we have fewer school-age students physically living in the school district of Black River Falls. It has nothing to do with open enrollment. In our enrollment numbers, it is fewer school-age students living. That's why that column in our district, pardon me, I should finish that. That's why that column is shorter, because there are fewer students this fall than there were in the previous one. So that's Forest Street. Move forward to it. That is Red Creek, the picture that you saw first. And Red Creek with the national averages. Middle school is next. And middle school national averages. And then we moved to literacy, and I felt like you already had the other picture of literacy, so I stopped that back and forth comparison. This is grades 2 through 8. Remember, our K1 are not in here, but you're going to hear about those when Dr. Sullivan presents.
I appreciate you including this, because that puts a whole different perspective when you look at those.
Data taken out of context can do so much damage. Data in context can be used for improvement efforts. Red Creek reading, 2nd through 5th grades. And middle school reading. And that would be the last of it. So we did not break it down by individual grade level. We are really close to the state report cards being able to be shared with you. We have shared some of them internally. Next Monday, we've got a big data dig. My hope is that we could schedule a board development session where, I don't know if some of you may recall, at that time, Stephanie and I put together data binders that we could disaggregate and look through all of that stuff. Dr. Sullivan and I would love to offer that again. I don't know when the public release of the report cards is going to be, so as soon as that date becomes more firm. Today was the last day that people could submit errors on their data, so we get to see them first and do some initial calculation, and I'll tell you we have some errors on our high school one. It does not matter for the score, but this year is the first year on that state report card that they're talking to you about what percentage of your students are involved in art classes, what percent are in music, what percent are involved in dual credit options, which percent are doing AP classes. And our Skyward tracking, we used to, every time a report was due, we'd send it off to DPI. Now they reach into our Skyward and they pull them out, and so if all of our connections aren't correct in Skyward, it doesn't pull accurately. So Michelle Wood has been at the high school, she's been knocking it out of the park working with DPI. We think our AP classes got fixed because otherwise it showed only one kid took an AP class, and we absolutely know that's not true. So we're hopeful. What they said is that they're not sure they're going to correct those errors when the report card does become public. Instead, on the link, there'll be a little note, click here to read data notes inaccuracies. So I don't know that it'll change the report card, but we will know that it was a lot better than that. So anyway, we're anxious for that date, and we'll schedule a deeper dive into the data with the board at that time. Any questions about what you saw? Perfect. In your packet, I also included, while we were talking the AGR, there was just a state report, just a one-pager that came out about the achievement guarantee reduction, and I just included it for your information. We don't need to do anything with it. I just thought since they summarized for you, it would be interesting perhaps for you to see which other schools in the state are connected with the achievement guarantee reduction, pardon me. So.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments?
Yeah, about the AGR, actually. Yeah. One of the things that, if I read this correctly, are they looking to reduce class size to no more than 30? Is that part of the AGR program?
Yeah, so interestingly, AGR used to be called SAGE, and the only requirement for SAGE was your class sizes. So that was the only thing schools committed to, was that you were willing, at first it was 15 to 1, and then after a couple of years they said, 18 to 1 will now also meet that mark. And so they had all their eggs in the SAGE basket, 18 to 1 class sizes. then further research, and they decided, you know what, there's more ways that you can get at student achievement than just class size reduction. So that's why you see class size mentioned so much, because that was the primary indicator previously. In our district, we have some grade levels that reach that class size, but not all of them. But we do have the instructional coaching, and we have the one-on-one intervention, so we still meet the expectations of AGR with having our class sizes. We're usually right on that bubble of 18, 19, right somewhere in there. So pre-AGR, if we had 18 kids in a class and one more moved in, we had to hire another full-time teacher, otherwise we weren't meeting our SAGE expectations. So I greatly appreciate the increased flexibility that we've gained with it turning from SAGE to this.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you. Move forward to the seclusion and restraint report for the 2021 school year.
Mrs. Timpey is going to join us. She's got great news to share.
So as you see in the report that you should have received ahead of time, I pulled the data from the last 3 years. Seclusion and restraint, for those who are unfamiliar with it, is the act of either holding a child physically or placing them in a space where they cannot hurt themselves or others when they're actively engaging in hurting an individual. So it's only used as a last resort. There are several other methods and means that we can use as adults to prevent the need for seclusion and restraint, and you'll see that in 2021, we had a major decrease in our amount of usages of seclusion and restraint. In 2019, 2020, for example, there were a total number of 109 incidences, and in 2021, that was reduced down to 13. So a huge difference over the years, and I would like to think that it's just going to continue to improve and get better as we learn more and know more.
I asked, so it's unfair to ask Ms. Timpey, why do you think it changed so much, right? It was an unfair question, but you had some thoughts.
Yeah, so I wasn't here to know why, but part of it is I know that some of our most challenging students with the highest level of needs were home last year due to COVID and not in the schools. And then I was trying to rack my brain all day on the second one that we talked about.
So professional development. After the 2019-20 year, we recognized that we were not moving in a good direction, and so Dr. Kielbasa worked with DPI and provided an awful lot of professional development for our aides that work most closely with some of these students, as well as our special education teachers. And there was an awful lot of new learning around it. At the same time, the law changed around seclusion and restraint. And so we are completely in compliance with the new law, but as Ms. Timpey pointed out, our policy needs to be updated to align with that, but our practices are in alignment with the changes to the law. DPI has already been here to talk to us about it and are very pleased with the progress that we've made. And they did some kind of spot checking with staff members and felt like we were knowledgeable and we were moving in the right direction. So I think it was a combination of 35% of our students. So part of that, the principal said, is just proximity, right? When there are 35% less students in the classroom, that's less bodies that ping off of each other. And so that is a factor as well. And so if you scroll down just a little bit, Jill, I think it's also important to look at that is the number of students that they involve, right? That is a really low number. And so you can look at the high incidence rate and draw one conclusion, but again, data responsibility, you can also look at the number of students that are impacted, and it was a small number of students that had a lot of incidents previously as opposed to the contrary.
So a lot of repeat offenders.
A couple of them, yeah. Yep. And that tends to be kids come to school with a lot of trauma and a lot of feelings, a lot of things, and maybe some skills that they haven't learned yet. And so, we're here to help them be safe and work their way through that. And so, I will say too that one of the methods that we use is nonviolent crisis prevention intervention in approaching student behavior and misbehavior.
And we do have 3 certified trainers in our district, myself being one of them. So we will continue to grow and get better at this.
And I'm glad that you brought that up. So any adult involved with these situations had already received the nonviolent crisis intervention training, and it was the updates to the new expectations around the law.
Any questions? Thank you, Mrs. Yankee. Thank you. Move on to student success report. Dr. Sullivan up next. Thank you.
If I could, just one moment before we get off this. I also want to remind the board that it was, if you go back up to the top, it was January of 2020 when we started the offsite programming over at Gephardt as well. And so there were several students from Red Creek that were square peg round hole, right? This was not the appropriate setting for them, and so that change of placement was a significant game changer for those students as well. Okay.
So I'm going to be talking through tonight about some enhancements that we've made to the curriculum, the reading curriculum in kindergarten and first grade at Forest Street, and how we use data to help us inform those decisions that we make. In order to do that, I'm going to start by showing this visual, which is the rope, the reading rope, the Scarborough's rope. And so when I'm speaking about reading, I won't necessarily speak to you about reading levels and whether someone's at an A, a B, or a J, or about sight words. Rather, I'll be referring to the elements that are on this reading rope. So we frequently talk, we're looking at reading through this lens at the top of the rope and the bottom of the rope. So when we're talking about the top of the rope, we're really talking about what we can do through a conversation and what we can hear. And when we're talking about the bottom of the rope, we're talking about our ability to actually decode the text. And then you'll also see where it says phonological awareness. And that's our student's ability or reader's ability to hear and manipulate sound. So when students first enter becoming a reader, or they're beginning to become a reader, you really need to focus on the bottom of the rope. And the programming that we're talking about is going to really focus in on that light blue strand that's weaving through the reading process. So we go to the next slide. In order to measure the bottom of the rope, we are using dibbles, and we're using this through K-8 in different ways. Dibbles has different measures. It is a nationally normed test. It can be used for screening, and it's really a good measure for figuring out what's going on with your system and for screening children into places for intervention or for what they need most. So what is important for our conversation tonight is that in kindergarten, we're going to be talking about a measure called PSF, and that measures phonemic awareness. And incidentally, phonemic awareness is the #1 indicator for later reading achievement in 3rd grade. So I just want to go through quickly and explain this graph. It's a pretty interesting way of looking at data. So this was the DIBELS data for the PSF section of the DIBELS test in fall of 2020 for kindergarten. And along the left, that's the number of students that are in each category. And then along the bottom, that is actually the number of words that a child was able to segment. So if I'm giving the test, I would say to the child, cat, and the child would have to go at, and that would be worth 3 points. So in the fall, when kindergarten first enters, we want them to be able to at least do 8 of those to get into the yellow. So that's when they entered in 2020, we were at 49% of students intensive, so we're about half and half. And so then in the winter, we took another measure, and we found that 72% of our students still needed intensive support. So that's not going in the right direction. So at that point, we decided we needed to make a decision, and we implemented this program called Hagerty, which really focuses in on this reading skill. And so just on the next slide, Hagerty is a 10 to 15 minute drill type of thing that teachers do with students in the classroom. All kids get it. And it takes a lot of professional development and some training and new learning, but our teachers really engaged in this work. And a really interesting piece to it is that it combines hand motions to work with the actual sounds. So then after implementing in the spring, we reduced the number of students who needed intensive support down to 33%. And the blue means those students are one grade level above. So it's pretty significant growth. We're not satisfied. We don't want 33%. That number should be running at about 5%. And this year we have added an additional intensity to the programming. But that was a good indicator that that was a good decision made by the data. So then we did the same process in first grade. Oh, pardon me. This is where, can you still hear me? Okay. This is where students entered in the fall. So I don't know if you remember back, but we had 50% last year, and this is like at 76% in the red. So we have a big job in front of us. So this is looking back now at first grade, fall 2020. Same story, an increase in students in the red, moving in the wrong direction. We implemented Haggerty. We saw really good growth with only 16% in that intensive spot. So this is a really good leading indicator, or that forward looking of where we want to go with our curriculum.
So I just want to explain that process because we just looked at the universal screener data. The purpose of doing those universal screeners is for the teams of teachers to then sit down and say, okay, that's what it looked like in fall. We're doing all that we can, and now winter we sit down and we do that universal again, and you're not seeing the growth. So research, action research, what are some of the best practices, what are other districts using, who's being successful, how can we learn from them. Purchase this program, you saw how cost effective the program was, and look at the amazing difference. And this is something that if you ask, so many times when we change curriculum significantly, teachers feel like it's being done to them. Last month you heard about the Orton-Gillingham training in which the teachers initiated that themselves, and this is something that they feel fantastic about. And so last year it was from January to the end of the year. We're really excited to see with a whole year ahead of us to implement the kind of work the progress that we will make, so.
And on the next slide, we can see the first grade data for the fall, which I also think is a really good indicator of a shift that's coming. Because if you notice back, we were at like 65% last fall, and we're back to 38% in that intensive support now. So they're keeping a lot of that knowledge from kindergarten into first grade. So that's good news. Again, we're not satisfied. So kindergarten is continuing with this PSF as being their primary goal, but first grade is going to move into another indicator, which is nonsense word fluency, which is a really good indicator for phonics, or the ability to quickly read. So read fluently, efficiently, and effectively. So the other thing that I think about the context of all of this is that a lot of this information around this strand, this light blue strand that we're talking about, really came out in 2015. And so there's all sorts of really good brain research about how we have to work on what we hear and the sounds, and that's really driving new curriculum that's coming out. So like we have CPLA, and so that doesn't even have this implemented in that main programming yet. So that we'll be seeing that in future curriculums that are coming. And I think that's part of the reason when we look at the national norms, if we look at the NAEP for the whole country, where we see 65% of students in 3rd and 8th grade are testing below grade level. And that context really shows us where we've been as a nation and where we need to be moving forward and the things that we need to do. Any questions?
No, not a question, Nicole, but I really appreciate getting that good news. Because it seems like a small section of time really made a difference. In a teacher's day, it really made a difference in the scores, and I appreciate that, and I'm proud of you for bringing that into our district.
I had a question too. I had a question for you. This isn't working. So anyway, the point is this just the first kindergarten and first grade structure right now, or is this? I know we did the latter data, older data for the other students, but basically this is being introduced. Haggerty for just kindergarten and first grades right now, right?
Right.
Okay.
So I can turn this off, but we have Haggerty for kindergarten and first grade because that's where it's most appropriate. We have another program called Kilpatrick. He's like the main researcher in this area for older students, and then we have an even more intensive way of looking at this section of the rope, which combines even more pieces to make it more structured and systematic for that 35% that we saw that didn't make growth yet. So.
I think I got it working now. You gotta push it twice, I found out. Okay, sorry. last question, when we do, I don't know you're part of the interventionist program at all, but are we taking some of these skills that students that haven't learned these things and applying that to the students that are behind grade levels, out of curiosity?
Yes, all the way, we're working on it, we're working really hard at it and trying to make sure we're all the way through the high school, so, yeah.
This is the first year that we've had a reading and math interventionist at the high school level, and so while this is, phonemic awareness, we think obviously our youngest learners, as Dr. Sullivan pointed out, there are next layers as the kids get older that it's not as, kindergarten-y, but it's still getting at those same core skills, the science of reading skills that we need.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Sullivan. Next is monthly expenditures. You have those in your packet. Is there anything you'd like brought out for discussion? Any questions on that?
Not brought out for discussion, I should know this, but are we still doing free lunches for everyone? Okay, because I saw some expenditures in there or something for lunches, I wondered, I thought we did. Okay. Just checking.
Any other questions or comments? Is there a motion to approve the monthly expenditures as presented?
So moved.
I'll make the motion. I'll second it.
Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Have a discussion about certification of the tax levy. Jill?
So all of our financial planning comes down to last Friday was the first time we had our real aid numbers and our real, all of the fiscal things that we needed just came in on Friday afternoon. So Jill had a stunning weekend working through this.
This is fun stuff, so. I guess this Dr. Severson's correct. We received our certified aid amount on Friday, and that was the last piece of the puzzle for this fiscal year. As you know, our budget year actually started July 1st, so here we are, right, October, and we finally have all our numbers, and that is just the way school finance works. So I'm just going to go through an update. You approved the levy back in June, so the full levy amount was approved in June. And I'm not requesting any change to that full levy amount, but I'd like to talk to you about a little bit of a difference in where we allocate that levy. Just going back to some of the budget parameters. So just to recall, there was no increase in the per pupil revenue limit amount. The revenue limit is really acts as our spending cap. That is a total of equalization aid and the tax levy and some other things in there as well, but those are the two biggest pieces. There was no increase in the low revenue ceiling for low spending districts, which School District of Black Bear Falls is a low spending district. The past couple of years, we've appreciated a little bit of a bump, $100 to $200 to increase that per pupil revenue limit amount, not for this year. There's no provision. There was a proposal out there to have some difference in counting students. So a lot of districts had a low count for last year during COVID, what they counted for their resident students, and maybe even this year. There is no provision for that, so we had to live with the numbers that we were actually able to count that came to school, that were our residents. 2/3 funding was attained by the state, but they put that all into the equalization aid pot of money, so I just want to make sure you understand that. There was no new money for the district. It's underneath that revenue limit, so if the aid amount goes up, the levy goes down. So it's really a property tax relief. It's not any new funds for the district to spend. So I want to make sure everybody knew that as well. And of course, this all came into play after you approved the budget in June. So makes things a little bit more challenging. So some of our revenue limit factors that was the Zoom.
Yep, we'll get back.
Okay. So some of our revenue limit factors that we needed to wait for to be able to calculate the revenue limit in full was the third Friday in September count. And we count resident students that enroll in the school districts. So even though our kids might be going to another school district through open enrollment, we count them as residents for our district for the revenue limit count. So The aid amount travels with the kids through open enrollment, but for the revenue limit purpose, it is our resident students that we count. We did decline by, it's actually over 60 students for just September, third Friday in September to third Friday in September, 2020 to 2021. However, Dr. Stevenson had mentioned the summer school enrollment that we had, that was quite helpful. I had estimated in June, or before actually, that we still would be having a decline. I kind of expected that, but it was a little bit more than we had anticipated. I actually looked at 4K because that's kind of where we had been seeing a little bit of decline as early as last year. Let's see if I worked on these numbers. So for the past 5 years for 4K, our numbers had been 110, 110, 113, 141, and last year was 77, and this year is 89. So you can see that's a big difference in 4K numbers, and some of that carried through into kindergarten for this year as well.
Is that because of COVID?
I believe so. I had read something at the state level that enrollment overall in the whole state is down. So overall it's down, but there was a comment made about the early grades that parents are just keeping those kids home more likely. So we're able to absorb that sharp decline in enrollment through what's called a declining enrollment exemption in the revenue limit formula. So we don't take that full hit of 50 kids in 1 year. It's a exemption built in so that you get those funds back, per se. However, it's a long-term effect not having those kids, right? So our enrollment is truly declining, and as the 3-year rolling average ages out, we will feel the effect of those kids not being here. So stay tuned, I guess, for the next couple of years to see what happens. And as I said, the open enrollment, part of that, that is based more on the aid that's shared between districts, transferred to districts. We get to count resident students for the revenue limit. Just a note about equalized property values, that's another thing that we had to wait for. So that was October 1st, the Department of Revenue certified property values, equalized property values for districts. Overall in the state, that increased by 7%. For us, it was about a 4.78% increase, which was a little bit higher than I thought it would be. So that affects our mill rate in the end, which I'll talk about a little bit later. So our actual equalized property value for 21-22 is just over $1 billion. That's the first time it's hit over $1 billion. It's been 800 and some million, 900 and some million since I started 20 years ago. So that was the first time it hit over $1 billion. So that increase in property value, coupled with fewer students, puts more value behind each student in our district. And why that matters is in the state aid formula, it makes you look a little richer in the formula so that the state will share less in your expenditures. So how they calculate, just big picture, how they calculate state aid is they look at your expenditures from the prior year, they look at your 2 enrollment periods, September 3rd Friday and 2nd Friday in January, and they use those numbers to calculate your state aid for the following year. The other factor that goes in there is your equalized value, and they compare it to the number of students you have. So as you put more value behind each student, it looks like you're a little bit richer when you have a declining enrollment situation and your value goes up. So what I'm concerned about, we know our aid amount for this year. Perhaps next year, the year after, our aid could go down because we're looking a little bit different in that formula. So that's something that we need to keep our eye on as well and plan for that. So we are looking at receiving $1.7 million more than we did last year in state equalization aid. I had factored in some of that, but not all of that. Because again, that budget was approved, I believe it was August, and we of course approved the budget in June for our purposes. The state budget was approved in August. And again, that's largely due to that large increase in aid allocated by the legislature to go into that whole state aid pot of money. So back in June, we approved the tax levy that was $8,042,711. It calculated out to be a mill rate of about $8.30. That was based on my thoughts of what our equalized value would do. This tax levy that was approved in June is $642,000 lower than last year's tax levy, so it's decreasing as well. And the mill rate was 68 cents lower than last year's mill rate of $8.98. Okay? So after all of these factors, what we'd like to do is have the tax levy stay the same, that you approved it in June. And knowing that there's that inverse relationship of aid and property taxes, the Fund 10 levy amount would go down. But we'd like to take advantage of that and use it in a defeasance again in Fund 39. And so not change the total levy that you approved in June, and put that amount in a defeasance in Fund 39. And just a reminder what a defeasance is, it's that additional levy that we can levy for debt service. It's above the amount that's needed for the scheduled debt payments, but we can pay off debt early with it. It's outside of the revenue limit, and we use it as a strategy to pay off debt more quickly. For the last 5 years that we've done this, we've saved interest costs of over $2 million on that debt that we paid off. It helps us level out those tax levies. As I noted, I have a little bit of concern. I'm not sure what the aid amount will be for next year. So I'm worried that we don't get the same amount of aid. So what happens? Our levy's gonna shoot right back up. So letting it drop and go way up higher than what it is currently, I'm not sure we wanna do that. So this is a way to kind of levy those bumps out of those state aid amounts that we don't know, and sometimes school finance rules change and we don't know what those are at this time either, because it's biennial budget. We also capture more equalization aid, so those debt service payments that we do make, we do get aid on those as well. And it has created in the past for us some opportunities to add on new debt when we needed to, for like the referendum, and we didn't increase our tax rate when we did that because we had that built in and we're able to fill that hole where we had created paying off some debt early. So here's that comparison, just looking at what was approved in June. As you can see, the total was $8,042,000. I had estimated Fund 10 would be $5.8 million. What we'd need for Fund 39 was $2.2 million, and Fund 80, that's a community service fund, at $19,010. What I would like to see happen instead is do a budget modification for Fund 10 being $4.5 million, Fund 39 $3.4 million. So just taking that difference from Fund 10 and putting in a 39. Keeping Fund 80 the same, still having that same total of $8,042,000. We had estimated the tax rate in June to be $8.30, so a drop from last year of 68 cents. For October, we look at a tax rate instead, based on this proposal, of $7.94 per thousand. So we're still seeing that drastic drop in the tax rate and a drop in the levy, and capturing that as well. Just wanted to show you some tax rate comparisons just from our neighbors. These are from last year. So here we are, right here. We were at the 898, and you can see where all our neighbors are. The only ones lower than us here are Sparta, Toma, and Viroqua. Here's Melmin. They're quite a bit higher than us. I believe their tax rate was $12.15 last year. This is a little bit more involved graph, but I just want to give you our last 10 years of levies and rates. So the blue bars are our levies, and you can see they're pretty steady across. They increased a little bit with the referendum in 2014-15. We did increase our tax rate at that time. We first talked about $1.11, and as the numbers came in closer to October, we then said, no, it's looking better. It's looking like 99 cents, and in the end, it was actually 98 cents. So that was the increase for the high school edition and Red Creek Elementary School that we're sitting in. So that's what that tax rate did then. And then you can see the orange line decreased the next year to 945. We kept it the next 2 years at 945 with the defeasance strategy. We let it drop then in 18-19 to 898, and we've done there the last 2 years, again, using the defeasance strategy. And again, proposing for next year, or for this year, I'm sorry, $7.94. The red line is the state K-12 average, so you can see where that is tracked at the same time our tax rates have tracked.
And so Jill says it very calmly. Me, I'm like giddy over here because we just passed a second referendum and our tax rate would still drop by over $1. That is amazing in my opinion. She says it very calmly, but if you look at that, there's been $45.5 million put into our facilities, and yet our tax levy continues to decline because of using that defeasance strategy and paying off, reducing the interest rate costs as we are able.
Okay, this is Dawn. I had a question, Jill. If the 3-year average for the I'm not technical. Yeah, basically it's declining. So if we lower the rates lower right now.
It was.
Okay, thank you. If it's lower right now, will we have to adjust again in 2 years to go back up? I know it's impossible to predict, but if the current trend continues, would we have to raise the levy amount again, or the tax amount per $1,000? I was
We
curious.
can only raise the levy the amount that the revenue limit will allow us to.
Okay.
So if students drive the revenue limit and those keep going down, we'd like to be going down as well. And we'd be talking about a defeasance again, whether we want to do it or not.
Thank you. That's what I was curious.
Yep. So that's all I had. I just wanted to let everybody know that I plan to share this at the annual meeting in this similar format as well. There is no approval needed from the board for the tax levy because it's the same amount as you approved in June. After the annual meeting though, we do have some budget modifications just from switching to Fund 10 to 39, switching the aid amount to what it actually is, and some other grants and things like that we want to include.
And so just wanted to let the board know that it looks really messy that we have this meeting tonight where we're hearing all this information, even though you've already approved it in June. We'll have the annual meeting, and then immediately after that will be a special meeting because all of those other pieces, like she said, all have to come back into alignment. But it becomes this, we need this information before we can do this, and then this needs to happen before this. And so unfortunately, it's going to be a little longer night with needing that special meeting at the end, but it will likely be majority information that you've already seen and heard. It's just going to lock it all in for those budget modifications afterwards.
Did you have any other questions or concerns about anything I presented?
No, I was showing I'm getting about the numbers.
I'm sorry.
So we did tell them about that one exception that so there are times when I'll let you say it.
No, go ahead. What were you going to say about the dependent enrollment exemption?
No, that sometimes our tax rate goes down, and because of the way an individual's property was evaluated, their individual property tax still goes up, and so then we get calls at the district office and say, you said the rate was going down, and we say, yeah, the majority of people's rate went down, but it depends how your individual property was assessed. And so we said, with this dropping a whole $1 lower, because $830 was June, remember, it's coming from $898 to $794. We're hoping that that's enough of a drop that everyone will feel that, even if your individual property was recently evaluated higher. We're hoping that's a big enough drop that everyone will get to feel that, as opposed to some people who don't always get to realize that.
And the real piece is the levy is dropping too from last year. So the levy is about $640,000 less than last year as well.
I was just thinking back to the referendum and people, I think a lot of people didn't believe us, that it wasn't going to go up, the rate wasn't going to go up, and you can see it there, so that's excellent. I really like that idea of the defeasance.
Thank you, Jill. We'll move on to facility bids for the middle school.
All right, so many of you may remember that we did the middle school bid project first before we did the bulk of the, so not first, we did the high school steamed hot water, and then the middle school before we did the Forest Street and the rest of the high school addition. And when those bids first came in, we were disappointed at how high they were compared to some of the other numbers that we were seeing. And so after lots and lots and lots of consideration, we decided we were going to rebid it. We were going to pull back on that project at that time, and we were going to rebid it. So this is that top section. That is all of the HVAC bids that we received, and it is a much wider spread of people bidding than we had last time, meaning there's many more participation, so we had lots of coverage, but unfortunately the numbers are all higher than they were last time. And after talking to Myron and Kent, Weinman, about why we think last time it came in lower. The person who was our low bid last time did not even bid this time. Last time he never even came on site. All the rest of them that bid last time came and they dug in and they crawl through the crawl spaces and they learn as much as they can about a project first, and then they put in their bid. And the company that put in the bid last time never came on site. They didn't bid this time. And when Myron reached out to them when we got this and said, hey, how come you weren't interested this time? He goes, I was going to lose my pants on that last one. I did not put together a good bid and I can't afford that, so I'm not doing it. So unfortunately, the bid is higher than we were hoping. So that increase on the top number is one that we just feel like we don't have a choice. We have to accept the work, and we are still very able to take the lowest bidder, Hinkle Brothers. And then Bartengale is the electric automation systems person that we've used throughout the rest of our project. And so this budget, this item is kind of linked to the next one, so I don't know if you want me to talk about them both together, if you'd rather take care of this one first and then go on to the next one. Do you have a preference?
What was the initial bid?
So the initial bid, this is $200,000 higher than the initial bid, so it's up there.
You want to just discuss the next item too? Okay.
Okay, so the other one that I want to talk to you about is, and I don't have a document for this one, our Fund 46 Capital Maintenance Fund. So the moment the state of Wisconsin said school districts can now start to carry over money to address their own capital maintenance plans, we started one, and we've been slowly putting money in there. That was before the 2014 referendum, certainly before the most recent referendum, and we always think of, with that capital maintenance, we think of our roofs and our blacktop, right? So when you think of our district moving forward, the rest of our facilities are in fantastic shape for updates and space provided, but roofs and blacktop always need to be on that cycle. And so when we sat down and talked about that Fund 46, that's really the big ticket items that we can think of out of there. Our other boilers have been done, the window replacement has been done, the spaces have been added, all of that stuff. So there is about $552,000 in that Fund 46. If you recall, the board approved the option to pay for our bus garage transportation center. Right now, we have not used all the dollars that we had originally allocated out of Fund 46 for that project. And by the way, the buses are moving tomorrow. A little segue, super excited about that. So this capital maintenance fund still exists at a fairly high number. When we were going through the bid process for the referendum pieces, there were two items that were, I'm going to say, user preference, and we talked about them as a full group when we moved forward. The first one, if you recall, we did that energy savings project with Upper 90, and they said it was a 4-year payback. It was faster than that, and we just had a really positive experience with them. And so when they talked about the commissioning of this project, we added that on after the referendum, and so that put our referendum really close. Then, as we went through the project, there was several vendors for the automation, so meaning Ken Twyman can log on from any internet source and get to all of our building systems. He can check the temperature in this room, whatever, that automated system. We've been burned in our last project with some less than user-friendly, less than customer service in those vendors, and so we steered away from one vendor and went with Bartengale, who we've had a very positive relationship with. That is who has this building, great customer service, but they've come in more expensive than the other one. And so we made that choice through the bid process to accept Bartengale so that all of our systems were on the same control system, as opposed to having this one, and then this one, and then this one. So those two choices, I believe, were owner choices. We talked about them, we presented them to the board, we approved those bids. And so I am suggesting that since we did the third-party commissioning after the referendum, and we upgraded the cost that could have gotten less expensive, but we believe less service, but we upgraded to the complete control, or to Bartengale, I'm suggesting that we use some of our Fund 46 capital maintenance dollars to close that gap on the referendum. So here's where we stand on the 23, that was the last one, $23 million referendum. We are $206,000 over, 206,000. They can't issue the next contracts unless we have a balanced budget. And so what I am proposing, we still have a 5% contingency on the forestry project and a 5% contingency on the high school. They believe that forestry should stay at 5% because a remodel always has more opportunity for challenges than a new build. They're comfortable dropping the contingency at the high school, which would cover this. I'm nervous about dropping that too early because you just don't know what could come up. And so it's possible that when we get to the end of the project, both of those contingency funds will be there and we won't have to touch our Fund 46. I'm asking for authorization from the board to use our Fund 46 for the third-party commissioning, which we strongly believe will pay for itself once our systems are up and running, and for the upgrade to the Barton Gale. If we say we're taking out Fund 46 when the referendum project is further along, again, it's possible we don't have to, but I'm seeking that authority so that they can offer the contracts and move forward with the rest of the project. Questions, comments, concerns? Yes.
What was that total? So you, 552 available in the fund, what was the total amount?
Well, so 206 is what we are needing to close the gap on.
But you may not have to.
We may not have to, but I am saying that would be worst case scenario.
The 5%, then that's contingency right now. We're budgeted in there, we're over as we exist right now, or without this bid, or just if we include this bid?
If we include the middle school project, so if we include the middle school project, that brings us over as a grand total, and since that's the last bid, that's why we have to do this shoring up now, because this is the last bid package that came in on the total project.
Are there any other questions? So we have two things to approve here, and one is the middle school facility bids first, and then allocating the Fund 46 permission.
No more questions, sorry, before we make
That's
a
okay.
motion, that's all. What does that leave for a balance in the budget for the Fund 46 after this?
So it is at 552, did you tell me?
346.
546, and so take 206,000 out of that.
That'd be 346.
Thank you.
346 remaining.
346 remaining.
Any other questions?
Was there a follow-up to that? You look like.
No, that
Okay.
was it, that's what's in the math.
And so just to, like, if you think about the whole forestry project, 5% of that is sitting in this pot for contingency that is not budgeted for anywhere. And so last project, when we got to that contingency fund, that's how we did those very nice surfaces in our playgrounds, because we had the contingency funds, and so we could upgrade from the wood chips to that nice finish that's out there. So our last project, we came in under budget, had the contingency funds that we could then use in other ways, so.
Do one follow-up now. If we don't use that contingency fund, then we won't be using 446, is that correct? Okay.
Right. Okay, any other questions or comments? Is there a motion to approve the middle school facility bids as presented? I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Now, we need someone to make a motion to allocate Fund 46
$206,000.
for the project completion.
I move to allocate Fund 46, the amount not to exceed 206,000.
Thank you.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Facility update, exciting stuff.
Yeah, so I included some pictures for you. I don't know if you had any questions about them as you scrolled through. I don't really have a lot of narrative to go along with it. They just said that they would start creating them for us. It was exciting when I walked by Forest Street, headed to the parade, that new classrooms that are coming out into the courtyard, they've already got those footings poured and stuff, so it's starting to take shape an awful lot, so.
They said something about running into a lot of rock at Forest Street. Have they figured that out?
Well, the area there, that whole site is just so weird shape, right? So they've dug that hole and filled it in, and then dug it again and filled in different areas. So we know that the concrete that has been in the courtyard, Jill, right, has been replaced many times because it's a sandy. So the site is just not very helpful, let's just say. So sandy on one side, rocky on the other side. They just keep plowing through it. So they're okay with, yep.
And then you said bus garage or the transportation department is.
So Jeff Waffle, the head mechanic, has been over at the new site for a while, and so he's excited to have the buses there, because if you need to go put some additive in, he'd have to drive over to the district office to put it in. Or Chrissy needed to get the videotape out of one of the buses, she had to drive. So she's not quite ready to move offices yet, but the buses and mechanic will be at the new site, and Chrissy will be coming next week.
Thursday, Friday.
Oh yeah, when we don't have school on Thursday and Friday, she'll be moving. So.
Any more questions? Thank you for that. Move on to policy committee board
That
report.
was asked to be moved, and so we would be at the public comment section.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
Okay, so we're at public comment.
You want to get back in this room?
For public comment, the first person up will be Betsy Solbauer, the next will be Lydia Nordell. And if you are wanting to speak, Mr. Maston, we'll go back.
Do we want to go through the rules again? You have those on, Brad, like we did last time.
It's too fat for this stand. I'm afraid I'm gonna snap it. I think I'm afraid I'm gonna snap it. I think the
That's
microphone
it.
might be a little wide.
That's
so-
it, just going to ask, just to delay a minute. It's been requested that we go through the rules each time.
I think someone's going to go back there. I'm sorry, we should have a printer
Okay.
Good evening. We have several individuals signed up for public comment tonight. On behalf of our board, I want to thank everyone for taking the time to help this board guide our decisions. We have rules and policies that guide how our board receives public comment. The Blackburn Falls Board of Education encourages constructive, orderly contributions from the public at all regular and special meetings. Meetings of the board are conducted for the purpose of carrying on the business of the schools and therefore are not public meetings, but meetings held in public. The presiding officer will recognize the individual registrant and hold a public comment session lasting at least 30 minutes in length. After allowing this time limit for the initial group of speakers, the presiding officer will identify to the board the approximate number of remaining registrants, and the board may, by motion and its discretion, may elect to permit all remaining registrants to present their comments at that point in the meeting, close the public comment session, and direct all remaining registrants to either return at a future meeting or submit written comments to the district administrator, who will ensure they're circulated to members of the board, or extend the public comment session for a definite time period, for example, 20 minutes. In order to expedite comments this evening, we'll be calling a speaker and an on-deck speaker, as we've already started. The presiding officer shall recognize registrants in the number order of the written registrations. Upon being recognized, each registrant will stand, state his or her name, municipality of residence, and relationship to the district, and proceed to the substance of his or her remarks. The standard allotted time for public comment shall be a maximum of 4 minutes per individual, but the speaker is not required to use all 4 minutes. Normally, the speaker gives remaining time to other speakers. During a public comment period, board members will not engage in substantive discussion. The extent of any response to the speaker shall be limited in accordance with applicable law. If a person who intends to address the board at a meeting wishes to request a reasonable accommodation that will better enable the individual to have meaningful access to the public comment forum, he or she may make that request by contacting the office of the district administrator. This evening, for those of you unable or unwilling to wear a mask, we've provided a workstation. Where is that?
Back by Laura.
Back by Laura. When called to the on-deck position, you may move to this workstation, and Laura Simonson will again guide you through the process. Thank you.
Betsy Sunbow, I don't know why I'm always first, I don't plan that, so maybe get it over with, I don't know. Dixon, Wisconsin, I'm a parent, I'm a taxpayer. First I want to start with the proclamation that you guys investigated. I commend you guys for looking that stuff up. That's good. We need more of that from the board. Some of you guys have been here a long time, and some of the things that parents have brought up to the board, to the superintendent, teachers, and principals, that's gone ignored. And guess what? Parents have done their homework too, just like you guys did on this proclamation. From changing neighborhood elementary schools to grade centers, from 7-period block scheduling for the high school, standards, math, reading, science, history curriculum, from reading specialists to now interventionalists. Throughout these items, parents have expressed their concerns and have offered other options yet the district continues to ignore them. Our performance academically has continued to not prosper. In 2013, when Superintendent Severson was hired, she held public meetings to try to get parents more involved and to get more feedback. Sad thing is, not many parents or community members came. Usually it was her and I, a couple other people, and we had some really good cookies and some good talking. I served in the past on the Student Success Committee for numerous years, and I made suggestions that I received from teachers from our area, parents, and also from other school districts that were successful. Those suggestions weren't taken seriously. In fact, in some meetings I was laughed at. Here we are, 8 years later, and the mood for parents to be involved has changed, especially parents who do not agree with the path our district is on. The board has modified public comment twice in the last 3.5 months, and at the last policy committee meeting, they are modifying it again. First, I want to thank the board members and committee members for making sure the public comment verbally continues at board and special meetings. I hope the word shall have public comment remains and not to be changed to the word may. Public comment is vital in our public school. For too long, the board and superintendents have ignored the public. It would be something to see that with each of the changes that I just mentioned, did the district live up to the promise that academics would improve? We should see with the new interventionists this next spring. That was a good move. 2 weeks ago, Board President Rosmanowski put a letter to the editor on behalf of the board, and that said, and I quote, "We fully support Dr. Severson and believe she is the right leader for our district," unquote. Our district has been continuously in the bottom 4% of all public and private schools in Wisconsin. The board is supposed to lead and strive for academic excellence and provide the best learning environment for our kids. Under the current leadership, it's not happening. Maybe it's time to start listening to the parents and teachers and to start including them rather than try to silence them. We want to make Black River Falls great, just like you do, but we need to work together. There's one more thing. The letter to the editor on behalf of the board, I assume it was written during the closed session last month because when you reconvened, you read it. It seems the board president, Superintendent Severson, was in there during that, it was about her. And so my question is, do you guys support Superintendent Severson over the public that put you in this office? Just a thought, or maybe Wisconsin statute 19.85 means something different here. Thank you.
So next is Lydia Norval with Barnes Contact.
So good. They can hear me up front?
Yes, we can.
Yes, okay, great, thank you. Thank you for your, Lydia Nordahl, Pixton, Wisconsin. Thank you for your time and attention. And your opinion to the editor. Okay, no, that's all right. Lydia Nordahl, Pixton, Wisconsin. Thank you for your time and attention. In your opinion to the editor of the Banner Journal, you stated your goal is always what is best for students. Yet, I have been listening at many meetings to parent after parent telling you what is best for their students, and basically their input has been ignored. The board needs to respect and implement what parents want for their children, academic excellence, not what the Department of Public Instruction wants taught to our children, like critical race theory, indoctrinating children to believe that being white means being racist. It creates more racial turmoil in the name of racial justice. LGBTQ and transgenderism also permeates the curriculum, having a devastating effect on kids who haven't gone through puberty and whose brains have not yet been fully formed. The fake narrative that America was founded and built on slavery, causing many young people to hate their own country. A decline in test scores because of a decline in genuine education. We expect our kids to become responsible, thoughtful citizens in a free society. The books in our school library, such as All American Boys, The Hate You Give, Benefits of Being an Octopus, Love, Hate, and Other Filters, are pushing racism and police brutality. The book, Eleanor in Park, has so much filthy language and sexuality in it. I subbed here for many, many years, and kids were not allowed to talk like that. So, do we now allow kids to talk like that in school? I mean, why do we have them reading that? These books need to be removed from our school libraries. And please keep these ideologies out of our school. The board, making an official statement supporting the superintendent, I believe is inappropriate. Speaking earlier, you spoke of nonpartisan. It seemed very partisan. At times, we lose sight of who is our boss. Who are we supposed to be supporting? It should be the electors you represent, the people you who trusted you to do what they think is best for their students, families, and community, and not what you think is best. You represent us. Come together. Board and superintendent coming together. You say you partner with families with outcomes. Statistics haven't shown that for quite a few years. Although I have heard the interventions you are implementing this year in our students' literacy. I really hope that by spring that will be will just improving nicely. Thank you.
Hi, this is Barb Settlebauer. Yeah, Barb Settlebauer, and I had sent you through email my public comments, but I just want to make a few mentions of what I had written. And mine's all about these mandates. The mandates are destroying our kids. The sad thing is that you're not going to know this until it's too late. The longer that these mandates continue, the more normal this fiasco will seem to kids. Kids adapt. There's no question about that. They adapt. Older ones, we don't, but they do. And it makes me really sad to see that they think this is normal. And anyways, it's normal. So I guess I just have one question. From reliable sources, there was a mother who sent her children to the homecoming dance. And someone had asked her if there was a lot of people there. And she said, yeah. And then I thought, oh, well, did they have to wear masks? No, they weren't wearing masks. And that's all I said. Because I don't want to bring it up. And so then I got another person who said that they talked to a couple of parents, and they were there, and they said it was mandatory, but it wasn't enforced. Now, is that true? I need to know that, because if it is, they shut down a meeting because a taxpayer didn't want to wear a mask, but they never shut down the dance when non-taxpayers did wear one. So I don't know if that's true or not, if they were or not, but if it is, that's hypocrisy. Thank you.
The microphone coming from back there, or do you want to use one here?
My name is Sue Leholm, Black River Falls, and I am a high school counselor for our school district. Due to the second article printed in the Shopper by the Jackson County for Education Committee, I feel the need once again to address the board. In the first letter, I was sad. This next article, I'm just plain angry. The Jackson County for Education Committee does not support education in all of Jackson County, as the only school and community they criticize is Black River Falls. This committee also does not support our teachers, as the statement, our kids are not being adequately prepared for adulthood, is demoralizing and frankly quite disgusting. School board members, I have worked in this district since the fall of 1991. Mr. Epps, I worked with your two children, and your two, Mrs. Vaskanaski, and your two, Mrs. Diener, and your two, Mrs. Hoffman, and your stepdaughter, Mr. Webb. I assume that all of you would say that your children are doing well in adulthood. They are working, they are in school, they are kind, and they are healthy. Some of them did excel on their standardized tests, but not all of them met the state average on our state testing, but they are still good people. To members of the Jackson County for Education Committee, I also have had you as former students. Ross Goldsmith, I worked with you and your two kids. Nathan Babcock, I worked with you as a student. Heather Iverson Roskis, I worked with you and your daughter. The only individual I haven't worked with is Betsy Settlebauer, because she graduated in 1991 before I was hired. I know how well these people did in school. I also know how well they scored on their standardized test. Using your same logic, should we assume that some of you were not prepared for adulthood if you did not score the state average? Did you really care about those tests when you were a student, or were you, like most students that age, interested in your friends, your sports, and your social life? There is so much more to school than standardized testing. Yes, our school committee has many obstacles to overcome. So why not use your money and your efforts to combat our community drug problem? Or maybe the increased use of inhalants and vaping in school? Or why not assist with our attendance problem and the rising case of truancy? Instead of pointing out our shortcomings, why not celebrate all the other positive ways our school provides for our students? There are extremely many more productive ways to assist in the betterment of our school district, or, as your mission states, to support our kids. That is your goal, right? To support our kids? There are some days I wonder.
Thank you. My name is Margaret Fitt. I'm a sub-school bus driver. Everybody knows me as Maggie. All the kids, I'm afraid I don't remember them, they remember me. I love it. That makes me laugh. I'm here today to say, I passed out these DOT physicals that we drivers need to take. Based on our age and our medical condition, I personally am tested every year. If you're younger, you have a little more leeway. But what I want to point out to you is when I fill this out at the doctor's office, I have to sign it, and of course, I'm under civil and criminal if I lie. So, anyways, but there's nothing mentioned in here about wearing a mask during these health conditions. I feel if all the drivers are not accurately filling out those questionnaires because we assume it's without a mask. So if I was being honest, I'd have to go back and I would have to say, because I'm breathing my own CO2, my reaction times are slower. I have a lot to do, a lot of responsibility, and then you always mess with them, wrist tickles or whatever. So I honestly have to say that some of these I have to answer yes to. We're in those buses for about 2 hours, maybe some are less, an hour 45. And when it's this hot, it's really hard to breathe. The windows are down, but you're still at a risk. I would like to find out if we can have this form be advised under a mask, if you have to answer it correctly with a mask or without a mask. You should be up there. So, yeah. So anyways, I've worked here for 10 years as a full-time bus driver. I am now a sub, but I only stayed away a year. And I missed everybody so much. So, I came back as a sub. And I love it. We're like family. I'm excited about the new building. I just think you guys did a great job designing it and everything, so I'm happy there. But I would like to come back and drive. But they will now allow me because I will not wear a mask and drive. I just feel it's risking the kids' life and it's risking my health to do this. So thank you for your time, and don't read this. If you have any questions, let me know.
Thank you.
That was the last one, I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the comments. Thank you for the comments. We'll now go to 5.1, COVID updates.
So I did not provide a lot of new information. I am unsure what you are looking for. There was one thing I wanted to approach. I did not list it as an action item, but I wanted some direction from you. At the previous board meetings, Dr. Polzine and Dr. Crone have encouraged us to change our color guide. Right now, we're red, and it was suggested by Dr. Polzine that we, so what it currently says is when it goes from red to orange, our 712 would be masks, parent choice for masks, and then when it goes on to the next color, it would be parent's choice for all of them. And what he has recommended at our last couple meetings is that that all moves down one more layer, that red and orange, we would stay with the face covering required, and that it would only move later. Again, I did not put it on as an action item. I was unsure if there was additional information that the board was seeking. You ask for it every month, and so here it is.
Is there any comment? Are there any comments?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, I wanted to make a comment here about the COVID actually, so I had a little prepared statement. So we've had students in masks for almost 2 months of this school year, start of the school year. The data shows that student achievement is possibly not increasing as much as it needs to, as quick as it should. In fact, according to the most recent data, sometimes your snapshot looks like we seem to be declining. Why are we not looking at all options to help students achieve? Without much debate, everyone would argue that it's about the safety of the students. That seems like an admirable cause, but it's completely disingenuous as displayed by the school leadership and the school board. The current policy is for students to wear masks for 7 to 8 hours a day without any considerations of their activities outside of school. The hypocrisy is seemingly rife in our school district on this board. Outside the school district, most of us members of the board, including myself, choose to be mask optional. I have no issue with anyone's ability to choose the best course of action for themselves. The reasoning of each individual is that we decide our own risks. So why don't we force students to mask while we ourselves have the option to choose? This course of action gives the perception that we subscribe to the philosophy that, quote unquote, the rules are for thee, but not for me. Perhaps it's more than just a perception, and it's simply a fact. If this observation is dismissed as rhetoric or false, it would be part of the course. But I consider the facts observed by everyone in our community. Every single person that is not a student has the ability to choose their own way to handle the risk of COVID. The fact that we do not practice what we preach as a board, and school leaders say more than any lip service given to this policy. With quarantine, this issue may be even more evident. At the last board meeting, I was not feeling 100%, and I believed I had a headache. The next day I got tested, and it turned out I had COVID. I contacted the board and the district administrator, as we were all close contacts the previous evening. I did not report this to the county, as I informed the county I would tell them myself. I don't know if anyone did follow the protocols and acted by what this board has proved, but I'm extremely confident that those things would apply if they're inside the school buildings. Did every member of the board follow the protocols? Did they get tested or self-quarantined? I don't know. I am not the enforcer of the policy. The homecoming is a great celebration. My hope that is every student participates and enjoys the activities. However, the school policy requires masks in school. Was this policy adhered to at the event? I do not know. I was not there. But did the administration police this event like they do with the parents at the board meeting? I cannot answer this, but the people who attended, ask them and make your own conclusions. The parents choose to have the Black River Falls School District instruct their children. It follows that the parents' choice of how to handle mitigation should be left up to them. Following the guidelines from the CDC are simply out of touch with the behavior of this board and the district leadership. It is time to let the parents decide how to handle mitigation and for the school district to focus on student success instead of hindering their opportunities to learn. I stand for life without fear. To allow the generations of people that have done before us to live without compromise. I do not fear a virus with a 99.99% survival rate for children. I do not fear that parents will not do what is best for their children. What I do fear is that we are harming the children and preventing them from receiving the education they are entitled to. The current environment is unhealthy and unreasonable and causes fear to be the determining factor in how the school educates its students. We remove healthy students from school through no fault of their own, through quarantine. It is time that we live like we do outside of these school buildings, to live without fear and choose our own path. That's it. Thank you.
So may we ask questions of your statement?
If you wish to, well, a lot of those are rhetorical. I don't expect an answer. These are for us to.
There are some I'd like to respond to though. So just to be clear, vaccinated individuals do not have to quarantine, and that is the same whether it's the school day or whether it's a closed session board meeting. Vaccinated individuals do not have to quarantine. So your rhetorical question, yes, we did follow the same protocol we would expect our students to. And the second one, you said, our student achievement is not moving forward as we would like it to so far this year because of the masking. What are you using as indicators there?
Previous years. So basically, the data, like you said, is a snapshot. And you said basically that, sorry, exactly. The data you said is a snapshot. But we're using this COVID data right now as a hammer. And you said that's something we shouldn't do because we should look at an overall picture. And what I'm saying is, I'm saying outside of this district buildings, we all make choices outside of there to live the way we choose, or mitigation protocols for all of us. We seem to do that and we don't take into consideration that people perceive us outside of the school, and we could appear hypocritical about the sense of the fact that we are not masking up, we're enclosed. And I'm just saying, it looks like that we may be not practicing what we preach. And I can't say for if that's right or wrong. I'm not asking. I'm just saying it perception-wise, that's what's going on.
Sure, and according to public health and everything that has been put forth, there's no other time. Like if I go to Walmart, I'm not going to be in somebody else's 3-foot bubble for 15 minutes. And so the need to quarantine, all of that stuff, there's no other time in normal life that there's 20 kids inside these 4 walls for 6+ hours. And so it is absolutely true that we mitigate more at school than we do in any other environment. And I would say that's likely because I can't have another environment where people spend so much time together in one space for such an extended time.
Church, sporting events, parties, other things like that, we don't factor that because we're not in control of that. And what the parents are. And the parents have made those choices, and that's what I said. The parents choose for one scenario that's okay. Why are we telling them they're wrong, but we cannot choose that for this scenario? That's what I'm asking. And that's, like I said, this is rhetorical, I'm not expecting answers, there's no action item tonight.
I understand that, but when you make statements like that, I feel like I have a right to ask you for more clarity, because otherwise you make a bold statement like you're not following it, and I just want to point out we are, and so I recognize that you weren't necessarily looking for debate, but when you make a bold statement that I don't think is factual, I feel it's appropriate to offer the other piece in that, you know, I don't think you should just get to drop these things and we take them as gospel when I don't believe that's the case.
Well, the same applies to the data.
Absolutely.
So in other words, I give you the courtesy to basically make your statement before the data is presented, and I just expect the same courtesy, that's all. So, and I understand these are a little inflammatory in rhetoric, I get that, and I did state that in there as well, I know. This is just to proceed for the board to understand what people outside of this situation see, that's all I'm trying to do. And because we can't do it on an individual basis, we're forced to do it in open meeting right now, so, because I cannot have obviously a quorum talking about to everyone about what people talk to me about, and that's
I
what it's
have
for.
no problem with you sharing that. I was simply saying it should be open for the other side of the story. That's my only point.
Thank you.
Any more discussion on the COVID update? I really like the looks of the dashboard. It's very clear. You can get to the information that you need immediately. I commend the school district for keeping up with that.
I was really encouraged when I looked at the dashboard last week and there was nothing at the high school, nothing at the middle school. And so then I started to think, well, you know, maybe can we let up on that? And I looked again today and there are more cases, and I also keep track, the New York Times has a COVID tracker. And I looked at it again tonight thinking about that, and right now Jefferson County is averaging 9 cases per day, which is a 19% increase from the average 2 weeks ago, which is a very high risk. It says at least 1 in 6 people in Jackson County have been infected. I think there are reported of 2,294 cases, and hospitalization is up. So then I thought, well, I think we're doing the right thing. We're keeping kids in school. So I hear what you're saying, Troy. I hear about parent choice. A lot of parents are speaking to me in support of the mask. You know, there are definitely 2 different sides, and I understand your opinion, and I respect that. But right now, when I looked at those numbers, I think we need to keep it here for a while longer. Plus, once the little kids have a chance to get vaccinated, I feel a little bit better about it. Because parents then have had their child being able to be vaccinated if they want to. Right now, they can't get that vaccination. I don't want to put those kids in that danger.
Any more comments? Yeah, this is my 3rd time. There we go. Okay. Any more comments on COVID update? Okay, we'll move on to policy committee report. We had policies that were reviewed by the policy committee with the changes presented. We'll go through these for the first reading tonight, and then we'll do the final decision later.
Keep scrolling, the changes are.
Changes will be in red.
So the changes to the full-time public school open enrollment policy are in regards to truancy. As you are very clear, when it comes to open enrollment, there are very few reasons that somebody could or could not say no to an open enrollment. But truancy is something that we've talked as a county a great deal. Fall of 19, I facilitated a large countywide truancy task force, and we talked an awful lot about the families that just slip between the cracks. They will attend one district in our county until they file truancy on them, and then they will move to another district, and then their count starts all over, then they move to the 3rd district, their count starts all over. And so this is allowing us the opportunity to say no to an open enrollment student if they are already considered habitually truant. Right now, when a student applies for open enrollment, we don't ask for their past attendance because we didn't have any means to not allow that. But it has been the case that we've had a student who's attended and we want to, we filed truancy on them. Now our policy would allow us to deny their open enrollment at a semester. It can't just be randomly in the middle of the year. It has to be at a semester time that they would have to go back to their resident district based off of their habitual truancy. So we did not have this opportunity before, changing the policy so that it becomes possible. Next One was the public comment at board meetings. The policy committee looked at this and talked about the difference between a regular board meeting and a special board meeting, and there was discussion about this. And my recollection of the conversation was that it would be a public comment at all regular meetings and may allow public comment at special meetings. Public comment at special meetings would be limited to items noticed on the agenda only. And this is a proposal for the board to discuss, since it, I'm guessing there's perhaps more input on this one than there usually is on a first reading. What thoughts, questions do you have?
Yeah, I wasn't at the meeting, but I was told it was shall, and so I don't know if that's something that we should discuss as a board, because that basically, it's basically, it leaves a open-ended question sometimes at a meeting where it says may, does not say, but shall, basically is more definitive, that's what that was, well, just by that one word change there, like may allow versus shall allow, that's all. Like I wasn't there personally, but I must have meant so.
I wasn't at that meeting either. I just have a question. For public comment, would that be given during board development time also?
So, that is not the way, well, a special meeting, yes. So those are special meeting or they're a board study session, however we choose to do them, right? There's both our possibilities.
And then we would decide if there's public comment at those, or are you saying we would have it?
The discussion was that we may have the public comment at the special meetings, but it would only be limited to the subject that we were talking about. As you know, the special meetings, we're doing a deep dive into something, and we would only be taking the time to listen to comments about that particular subject that was on the agenda. And that was what the discussion was. Anyone else want to weigh in that was there?
Yeah, I mean, the may to, or shall to may, I mean, may allow, yeah, there's a possibility, shall allow 100% certainty. I don't know, if there's public comment, I mean, I'm okay with the may, meaning that most likely they can do it. I mean, as a board member, I'm not gonna shut them down and say they can't do that.
There still continues to be public comment at all regular board meetings.
Correct.
That we would always have that on our agenda.
So presumably, by saying may allow public comment at special meetings, that's actually adding more than was there previously, correct, or not?
No, sorry, so there's no words that are stricken from here, as you can see, and so the previous language, if you take out the red, for public comment at all regular and special meetings, so.
Okay.
So the point, I guess, if we say just the meetings and the may allow public comment at special meetings, that's, in a way, it's redundant then, because we're not taking away the right to have public comment during the special meetings, is that correct? So it's a little bit redundant, or no, am I not reading that correctly?
As I read it, so we are allowing it regular and special meetings, but in the future, we will maintain public comment at regular, and we have the option to allow or not allow special meetings.
So that's what we're saying, so we should say may not allow public comment at special meetings, if we're gonna be completely active about that then.
May goes either way.
But may, okay, may still allow negative in that sense though, too, may can be affirmative or negative, correct, in this sense. So what I'm saying is, if we're gonna say we're gonna do special meetings, we're gonna allow public comment, it should be more clear in the policy and not be ambiguous.
The clarity was there too, that about subjects that we could discuss it, or that we could hear about.
I'm not talking about the second sentence, I'm just talking about that first sentence.
Yeah.
That's all. Because it was very clear before the first sentence said that we were going to do a public comment at regular and special meetings.
Well, now, this is a first reading, and so if you have a change that you'd like to present, certainly present that, and you can decide on that, and maybe present that to Dr. Severson so she can share it with all of us.
I feel like that's what I just did, I'm sorry.
Okay,
I
so-
don't know what other process you
No.
want in place, but I feel like
But
that's what he's doing.
in our board packets, and so when we come back, we'll all have the information of why someone wants to change something on a particular policy. Does anyone else have any comments about this? You ready to move on to the next one?
While the rule is not something that is typically approved by the board, I wanted to share it with you. I brought it to the policy committee. Because of the restructuring of when public comment happens, we had to change the idea of when that public comment section closes. So if we start charging into the agenda and then later find out that one of those first items was something that people wanted to make public comment on, it would not allow for that to happen. And so the registration is closed at the posted starting time of the meeting so that we know what agenda items need to be withheld so that the public comment can happen beforehand. All right, so our previous policy on children of divorced, separated parents was woefully out of date. It's in the 400s, we just hadn't reviewed it in a while. It leaned very, very, very heavily on the parents needing to be the one to initiate much of the communication back and forth, and so the policy has been updated. This may seem like low-hanging fruit for you, but I will tell you that many of our offices, our secretaries find themselves in very awkward situations when one parent is trying to dictate whether the other parent has access to that child or not. And so this just very clearly says, in lacking any court document that restricts a parent's access, then both parents have access to that child. So if there is not a current court document, then both parents have access. And some of our offices have had to do they work very hard to work with the parents at that time, but there are some times when a parent comes in that we will call the other parent and let them know that they're trying to pick them up, but this is such messy territory that they try to very delicately balance, and so updating the policy will help to serve as that guide for them. The next policy, the student assistance programs, we are just deleting it as that is not something we currently do. That was back in '83 it started, revised in 1990, but that is not a process that we still engage in. And then final policy for tonight, 454, reporting child abuse and neglect. Again, this is one that it just was extremely out of date. 1990 was the last time. Right now, state statute is any employee of the school district of Black River Falls or any school district, is a mandatory reporter, and the previous language absolutely did not articulate that. It gave the opportunity for people to talk to their principal or talk to their counselor, and the law is very, very clear. In fact, when we hire somebody, Marty sends them out a link to the online training module, and they have to submit that completion of that child abuse and neglect reporting completion before they begin working for us. So the policy has been updated to note that. And do I have more? Nope, the other is just the rule that goes along with that same one.
Okay, we'll review those again and come back at our next regular meeting to make changes and improve. Okay, meeting minutes, you have those in your packets. Is there a motion to approve, or is there anything you would like to discuss or change?
Discussion, if we could, please. In the meeting minutes for the September, it's for the meeting minute, we got the abrupt meeting, we call out a person's name and in the meeting, and I looked back from what I could about meeting minutes, and we talked about speakers, but we've never pointed out public comment as far as the previous history. And there is a protocol that we've been following that we seem to be now changing in our meeting minutes. I'm actually very happy with the fact that we're going to log more information. I think that's actually helpful for future reference to actually call back on some of the things. But if we're going to start putting people's names in there, are we going to basically, we put Ms. Williams' name in there, are we going to start going ahead and start, like I track down most of the public comments and what people say, just the gist of it. Are we going to start doing that for every single one of our public comments and talk about what they stated and our interpretation of what they are? And for me, that gets kind of sticky. I think it's appropriate to say a member of the public maybe have done something that maybe abrupt our meeting, but when we start putting people's names in there, I think Because this is now logged in the permit, this is logged in the record of our meetings, that's gonna be forever, as far as I know, as far as legally speaking. And so I just wanted to know, is that something we want to start doing as a board, to start calling out people in the public, that are talking in public, and either pro, con, doesn't matter, are we gonna put their names in there? That's what I'm asking.
That's one that I just talked to September
If you can
20th.
pull that out, if it's possible to pull that meeting minute out, that'd be great.
And so just the answer of whether we're logging who speaks at public comment, when we were using the paper sign up, Marty scans those in there, and so not minutes of what they say, but what they signed up for. And now that it's the online, if you look at like last month's meeting, you'll see that electronic sign up sheet has been uploaded to last month's meeting. So we keep a log, not minutes, just for clarity.
Yeah, exactly, and I did see that, it's true, yes, and I'm fine with that, it's a log versus the document in minutes.
So you're just.
I'm just questioning, is that something we want to start as a new protocol, then are we gonna stick to it too, if we, every meeting, are we gonna start talking about who spoke what in public comment, that's all?
So what you're saying is just delete Carrie Swigham's name?
Yes.
And you'd be fine with
I think you can say the first speaker, beginning speaker, refused, just admit the name, that's all, in our public meeting comments, that's all.
I see no problem with that.
I agree with that, Fred.
I agree. Okay, so do you want to make a motion on that?
Yeah. Could I make a motion then to remove the individual's name from our meeting minutes and talking about public comment?
I'll second that. Okay, any more discussion on it? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carried. So, is there a motion to approve the meeting minutes as amended?
I make that motion.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carried. Dr. Severson's report.
Okay, a couple items for you. First, ironic that we're in this building. You heard about the gym floor challenges at Red Creek. Wanted to let you know that that insurance has all been processed and we will not have to financially invest in any part of that. And so that repair is going to be made. Wanted to share with you, it happened on September 30th, but we haven't met since then. Our swim team, we have 10 swimmers, and they had their first win in a dual meet, and so there are in 4 years. So there are seniors who've never won a single meet, and so they were really, really, really excited. They went over to Wisconsin Rapids, and so think about the size of that community. Many of our swimmers had their very best, and so that was exciting. This is an important one, so per our board policy, and I was going to write the number down and I didn't. Human Growth and Development Committee is meeting. Dr. Sullivan is organizing that group. We need 2 board members to represent. It is November 2nd from 4:30 to 6 to make out the rest of that committee. So November 2nd, 4:30 to 6, 2 board members. Are there people interested? Amy?
I'm interested as well.
Amy and Troy. Anyone else interested that we need to figure out a process or no? Okay, Dr. Sullivan, Amy Hoffman, and Troy Webb are your 2. Okay, and then last, I just wanted to share that the homecoming parade and festivities last week were just really exciting. So many times we heard from people that they missed it the previous year. I felt the parade this year had more different student groups involved than ever before. There's more community youth groups that started getting involved in the parade than in the past, which I think is great because it shows it's more of a community event as opposed to just the school district. So I thought it was fantastic. Went to the game that night. While I didn't come out victorious, the stands were packed. The band did a great job. It was just a really, really, really school spirit-filled week, which felt awesome after some of the stretches that we've been through. So just wanted to highlight that as well.
Now we have WASB. We have the regional meeting on October 28th. As far as I know, that's still going to be happening in person in Alaska, if you're interested.
Do we have any idea who's planning on going?
I for sure need to go. Amy? And Marie, I'll confirm with you on that too.
Okay.
If there's anyone else, just please let Marty know that you plan on attending.
So for sure I should register rather than asking Amy.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the legislative conference that is usually in November, that It was scheduled for Stevens Point, that has been changed to a virtual meeting, and there's no date on it yet, but that will be happening at a future date. Any other conference or workshop attendance? School board connection opportunities, I know many went to homecoming festivities.
And that Kimberly Development
Yes.
is another opportunity. Oh, I know, I wanted to ask you guys about American Education Week is right around the corner, and this was my thought. So we used to do lots of different things. Remember those years that we carried around the pancake stuff for 5 mornings that week? There happens to be a professional development day in October and another one in November. I'm wondering if the board would like to cook and serve breakfast to kick off, like we could do the elementary during October and then the secondary during November, just something that during those 2 PD days, it would give you an opportunity to interact with staff in a way. I know that you sometimes look for opportunities to engage with them, and so if that's something you're interested in, I can certainly do the backside coordination as long as you're willing to come help.
Do you have those dates?
October 28th and November, looking at the back table, Dr. Sullivan, November PD Day? 28th. October 28th.
Sorry.
We thought instead of the mornings of American Education Week, it might be nicer when there's a PD day so that it's not quite so early and they don't have to worry about greeting the kids in their classrooms and stuff on those days.
I can do it on the 28th if you want to start at 4:30, so.
In the morning. I don't know what you're planning on making, but whatever I make will not need that much prep time.
And no one will show up to eat it.
November 29th?
Yes.
Thank you. October 28th and November 29th. So I will send something out, but if you are available, we could do lunch as well if you would prefer. I don't know what your availability is, if it's better breakfast or lunch, but I just thought it might be kind of nice.
29th isn't part of Thanksgiving vacation, is it?
Oh, I don't know. I would assume so.
It's the day after.
Right after.
The Monday after?
Monday after.
Oh.
I did have a chance to get into Gephardt one day, just dropping off some donations for the clothing center, and it was really a nice visit to see that building being used and happy kids and staff engaged. I really enjoyed being able to stop in there.
And I know Dr. Severson talked about the homecoming parade, but that's what I had down too. There was just something different about it. I can't quite put my finger on it. Lots of school spirit, lots of groups. There was like a freedom, or I don't know, there was something different. It was very nice, very community oriented, so that was good. Also, standards-based grading, we met. We're still tweaking our 5 principles that we're using in standards-based grading, and we're getting close to bringing them to the board.
Thank you.
I'll tell you what it was, Mary Jo, you were outside and you didn't have to wear a mask at the parade.
You're right. That was, well, that was good.
It was different.
But it was so good, all the different, like the swim teams and, you know, all the different
Like
sports.
figure skating, that's not a school
Figure
event, but they
skating
were
is
there,
good,
and
yeah, so
hockey, and yeah, it was, you know, good stuff.
I've started reading in 3rd grade classrooms to two rooms on, well, Wednesdays for the most part, but anytime that can fit in my schedule and their schedule, and I absolutely thoroughly enjoy it.
If only you knew how to act with 3rd graders, right?
Okay, future agenda items for the board. Okay,
So we are having both the annual and
Special meeting.
there's a
Next
special
Monday.
meeting
we're
after,
having that.
special meeting after the annual meeting.
And to try to respect everyone's time, that special meeting is gonna be budget modifications, and that's it, right? And we don't have any other business to be done, just that needs to happen after the annual meeting.
Okay.
Is there any COVID information that you want to? Okay.
We have everything's on the dashboard.
Okay. Hearing no other items?
I revised it. The protocol for the COVID, when we have close contacts, is that available on the school website? I just didn't see it, that's what.
So the test to stay protocol, so there was options for quarantining?
Yeah, basically, the student becomes a close contact, where's the graph at? I mean, I see there's one there, but is that the only one there is, or is there one that involving testing and one involving just close contact?
So,
It's on there, yeah.
right there. So I recorded a video too of this document. No, that is it. That is, so you are quarantined because you're a close contact, there's the choices, the 10-day
Okay.
test to stay or 7-day.
I didn't see the chart, I apologize, I didn't.
No, that's right.
Okay.
Yep. That was emailed out last week, you should have gotten it. That's okay.
I don't have a student in the district anymore, so I don't know what's on the email list, so.
I'm sorry, one more time.
Without a student in the district, I'm not always on the parent.
I hit all contacts and board members, so
Okay,
did
perfect.
others,
I
did you
missed
get it
it.
last week?
Yes, we got it.
Okay, others without students did get it.
I apologize.
Nope, that's okay, I can check to make sure you're still on, that nothing happened, but.
The only other thing I was gonna say is I did an accelerated labs testing in Melrose today. It is really slick. There were lots of kids lined up and, it was an easy process and you got your results right away. I'm anxious for us to start tomorrow.
Thank you. Are there any other future agenda items? Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned.